Welcome and thank you for joining today's conference, Inspire for Vouchers Office Hours Sessions for PHAs. Please note that all audience audio connections will be muted until the public comment portion of the call. Feel free to place yourself in the question queue at that time by utilizing the raise hand feature located at the bottom of your screen. When it's your turn, a pop-up message will appear and you will need to accept the unmute message to become unmuted. If you are on the phone only, please press pound 2 to enter the question queue. To submit questions via chat, please open the chat panel by using the associated icon located in the toolbar at the bottom of the webinar screen. If you do not see the toolbar, please move your cursor and the toolbar will appear. Type your message in the field provided and send. With that, I'll turn the call over to Brian Fitzpatrick, Nspire V Program Manager. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Ahmed, and thank you all for joining. As Ahmed mentioned, I'm Brian Fitzpatrick, and I have the honor and privilege of being the Nspire V Program Manager. Great to be working with all of you. Hope you get something out of today as we collaborate with our PHA partners and go through some of their lessons learned, etc. So glad you're here. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving break, and welcome back. Next slide, please. The key agenda item for today's office hours is to listen to you and your colleagues. We've assembled a panel of 3 PHAs that are on their Nspire V HQS journey or have already fully implemented. And the target for today was really to just provide a forum whereby we can hear from them and learn from their experiences, and you can dialogue and ask questions of them as well as of the department as it relates to Nspire V. At the outset of this call, we will quickly just review some upcoming additional office hours and some other items relative to the program. Next slide, please. In just a little bit, I'll turn it over to Marcy Vega, who will introduce the panel of PHA participants. And but first, I also introducing Marcy as well as some of our other colleagues that are listed here that are participating in today's call. We're all here to help address questions of the panel, address your questions, etc. So these are the folks that are going to be facilitating today's discussion. So during today's core event, Marcy Vega will MC the session. Marcy is, as I mentioned, is supported by the array of colleagues listed here to help facilitate and address the questions. Following the tech session, we will open it up for all of you for your questions. And as Ahmed mentioned, you can also put them in the chat. Please put them in the chat as you go along throughout the discussion so that we can assemble those and put them into a form so that we can address them in the time that we have. Today's slot is scheduled for 1 hour. We're going to target around 45 minutes of the discussion with the panel and then 15 minutes to address your particular questions, if you will. The materials for today and all the other materials will be posted to the relevant websites, which I'll show you in a second. And we'll also put those relative URLs, if you will, in the chat as well throughout the session. Also in the chat will be a feedback form, as we very much appreciate listening and hearing from you and getting your feedback on this particular session so that we can improve our coming sessions that we have on the docket, as well as additional sessions that you may want to have. So please provide us that feedback. Much appreciated. Next slide, please. So just kind of a little timeline graphic here to update where we're at in terms of future sessions. You can see there's probably 8 or 10 listed here over the next coming months on a variety of different topics, whether they're targeted, such as the smoke alarm session, etc., or the GFCIs, as well as general sessions, so that we have time to address your particular questions and your input as well. Next slide, please. So really what we try to do here is just have a dialogue, really to provide a technical item, if you will. Today is really just an open forum, if you will, with our panelists to listen to them and then obviously to respond to your questions. Next slide, please. Again, we will place the links to these URLs in the chat, but this slide, which you'll also have access to, has a lot of referential information to various resources that we have relative to Nspire V program. So, Next slide, please. So enough of me. I really appreciate you all getting on here today. I appreciate our panelists for getting on, and your colleagues, if you will, to so we can listen to their experiences as they've gone through the transition from legacy HQS to HQS Nspire centric. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Marcy Vega. Marcy, thank you.
Thank you, Brian, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Again, my name is Marcy Vega, and I have the pleasure of serving as Regional Public Housing Director for HUD Regions 9 and 10. That doesn't mean anything to y'all. It's more that I am with the Office of Field Operations, and so my role is working with the field offices who you work with directly on a daily basis. And I am out here assisting in this effort to get Nspire V to the finish line in 2025. I'm happy to be emceeing today's roundtable, and I'll be playing the role of introducing our speakers, and then also facilitating, some questions that we've come up that we have heard from all of you in previous office hours, and then just basically having an informal conversation about, experiences from those PHAs that have gone out and implemented Nspire V. I'm really proud of the fact that two of the speakers on today's panel come from my region. And so again, really want to thank all the PHAs for taking time out today. Some actually had to pause and reschedule inspections scheduled for today just so that they could be here and share their experiences with you. So again, a lot of appreciation and gratitude for their commitment. So if we can move on to the next slide, I can go ahead and introduce who's on the panel with us today. So we have what I call a group of rock star PHAs. First, we have folks from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, otherwise known as MISHDA. So we'll be hearing from Marshall Brooks and Ann Mueller. And then from Washington County Housing Authority, which I will be visiting later today, we'll be hearing from Liz Morris and Belinda Dickey. And then from the beautiful city of Santa Rosa Housing Authority out in Northern California, we'll be hearing from Ms. Sylvia Coombs. So I don't know if we have a next slide, or I can go ahead and I'll go ahead and get started with, again, just first set of questions. My colleague Lori Rawson will be helping me to monitor the chat and then fielding questions. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just first have a question, and then I'll just put it out to the group, and then we can go ahead and get started that way. All right. So let's go ahead and get this started. I think the first question I'm going to send out to Marshall is what did your agency do to prepare landlords for this change in inspection standards?
Hey, thank you, Marcy, and hello to everybody. Just a little bit of background for our housing authority. We administer approximately 30,000 vouchers. We've been on Nspire V since July 1st of this year. Since then, we've conducted approximately 8,500 inspections under the Nspire standards. So to answer your question, Marcy, we did some outreach to our landlords. We had a letter that highlighted, Ann, who was on this call, spent a lot of time highlighting the differences or things that are changing between our HQS standard to the Nspire standard. We made ourselves available for any questions or comments, but really that was sufficient for us. The kind of my takeaway here was we did outreach, but we didn't have a lot of feedback or pushback from our landlords and the community as a whole.
And so then my next question then would be for Ms. Sylvia Coombs. What about residents? What did Santa Rosa do to inform residents of this change?
Well, again, to mimic Marshall, we have about 2,200 housing. We're all voucher based. And so we do about 1,000 inspections a year. We actually were on the pilot program. So we've been doing Nspire for the last 4 or 5 years. And we just formally adopted Nspire V July 1st, as Marshall has done. We've basically done nothing. because it's been the same for the last 5 years. And they get a letter noting that the inspection is coming. We go out and talk to them about the changes. And we haven't had any pushback at all because, again, it's basically the same as what we've been doing. There's very little changes that are actually affecting the tenants or the landlords. We just say, hey, HUD requires this now, and they fix it. It hasn't been nearly as dramatic as many people might think it has been.
Well, that's super reassuring. I'm wondering, Liz, in Washington County, did you get any pushback from residents or landlords?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'll also start with just explaining that we at Washington County have about 3,300 vouchers and an additional almost 2,000 regional and state vouchers that we also utilize HUD inspection requirements for. So we're serving about 5,000 residents. And the team had really, in the last year and a half, done a really good job kind of on the boots, talking to landlords as they were doing a hybrid, saying, hey, as we complete this inspection, this is maybe not a deficiency for HQS, but it's going to be one for Nspire as we're transitioning. So having that in-person conversation with landlords and residents while they're actually in their homes or doing those initial inspections. And overall, there hasn't been tons of pushback. I would say just curiosity and questions. When there was a little bit of confusion, even a year and a half ago, when we were starting to understand Nspire, as we've gotten more clarity, we've been able to kind of go back and say, oh, you know what, we got more clarity from this regulation, and this is what's going on now. And so overall, there's been a little pushback because they know that we're coming in and looking at standards regardless.
Perfect. I'm wondering, so for all the PHAs, and I understand for Santa Rosa, this has been years already in process, but maybe for Washington County and Mishta, how long did you start having these conversations or sending out letters before you actually had inspectors go in the units utilizing Nspire V?
For Michigan, your
oh.
flyer went out about 4 months prior.
To that first Nspire V inspection?
Yeah. So we gave them a 4 month setup. I think we gave them a quicker one just about the smoke detectors because it was a little bit of a change. But yeah, the big push we started 4 months in advance.
And Liz, what about in Washington County?
I can answer that. And we gave about a 6-month heads up before it was supposed to go into effect, and then realized that it wasn't going into effect until a little bit later. So they've had quite a bit of warning and reminders, and we continue to do reminders because we are doing a hybrid model right now. So we're continuing to go in, and although we're doing HQS inspections, we are notating with the landlords and the participants that what the Nspire changes will be.
Perfect. And I guess a similar question for your residents. Was it just conversations when the maybe a prior HQS inspection was going out? Did you do any kind of outreach through tenant newsletters and such?
We, again, went into homes and we were just letting folks know as we were there doing the current inspection that there's going to be some changes, and kind of took a little extra time to go over what we knew the changes were going to be to answer any questions that they might have, and then gave them information if they wanted to further look into it. And I've had a few emails here and there that I've been able to answer and even just give a quick call.
Perfect. This next question looks at inspectors, right? So these are the folks that go into the unit that are doing the actual inspections and utilizing this new protocol. So my question for all three PHAs is, what kind of changes did inspectors have to adopt? Did they have to do anything different as far as maybe a procedure, as maybe having new equipment, anything on that front? Yeah. And I will go with you, Belinda. I'm looking at your picture first.
I will say during our Nspire training, they did give us a list of equipment that we could potentially need. And we looked at some of the things that were going to be changing, and we went ahead and ordered the moisture readers. We went ahead and ordered the temperature gauge, the battery operated temperature guns. Those were the two big things I think that we added into the inspection bag. So we just went with what was recommended from the training and added, and it's been really helpful.
Sylvia, what about in Santa Rosa?
So we actually didn't add any new tools. We had been using obviously the receptacle tools for testing GFIs, and that we just continued to use. We don't have a lot of problem with temperature out here because it's a more moderate climate. So as long as the furnaces are working the right time of year, we don't overthink that one. And because we're not mold experts, we don't use the moisture detector as well, because for us, there was an implication then that we had more knowledge than we did. So evidence of mold, but we're not checking for moisture because we're not moisture experts. If you have more of a problem, we recommend calling code enforcement. So the tools that we have have been the same. And with regards to smoke detectors, that's been California law for a long time. So there's been no change for us in terms of where the smoke detectors were required to be to place. The GFI thing that's regarding the age of the unit, that's been new, and we've just been, it's in our letter. And when we find those, I just say, hey, it's been a change. HUD just now requires it, because it's easy and cheap. So please do it. So it's been, like everyone else says, it's been a lot of in-person things, which has been great. The tools haven't been something we've really needed too much. So that's my feedback.
Perfect. What about Ann and Marshall and Mishta? Did you find yourselves having to purchase new equipment, new tools for your inspectors?
So we did get the moisture meter. Don't really know that there's going to be value to that for us. Just like the other, we just do the visual mold inspection, mold-like. We did have to get the temperature gauges though, because we actually may even be needing to do that adjustment to the HUD rule for our weather, because the dates don't always work for Michigan. It could be 80 in November, it could be 60 in July. So we just never know. So we're probably going to ask for an exception for that. But yeah, it was totally needed for our areas. The biggest thing for our inspectors was just learning the new, because we went to a handheld, so we're electronic inspection device, and finding where the fails are at, because they were so used to going room by room under HQS. Now they have to go, okay, where's the location and what item is it a fail under? So that's really their biggest hurdle, was learning where to find the fails, and also the new 24 hours.
I actually want to just touch back upon the issue about the devices. So, and you mentioned that in Mishta they're using a handheld device. Who is your software vendor, and are they assisting you in that with the programming, or is this something you've developed on your own?
Oh no, that's us. We did not develop that. Marshall, do you want to take the software question?
So, yep. So we partner with Emphasis Software for our solution, both for the HV program as well as the inspection application. So prior to moving to Nspire, we were on a Windows-based version of their HQS inspection. We were using Windows-based tablets. And so one thing we did to try to help this transition is they had made available a version of their HQS inspection application through iOS and Android. So even though we knew Nspire was coming, we chose to adopt the HQS application for the mobile phone via Android or iOS, so that when it came time to transition to Nspire, we weren't transitioning hardware as well. So we went through kind of initial transition to mobile devices with HQS. All of our inspectors got updated equipment as far as that goes. And then when we switched to standard in July, Emphasis has built their products they were very similar and familiar to folks using them, just switching over to the standard. So we kind of had a two-part migration to Nspire, first with the technology and then later with the standard. So that certainly has helped. I recommend it to anybody that has that opportunity or it makes sense for their agency. It wasn't so much change at one time. We first transitioned the technology and hardware and then to the standard.
So that was really interesting. So essentially you help your staff first get used to the idea of using the handheld device. So you went from a paper to an electronic solution before you went ahead and adopted the new standards.
Correct.
So Marshall,
what about, oh yes, go ahead.
So I'd like to support that because we did a very similar thing. So we were doing the Nspire training, and so that was on tablets, which was great. And it was an online system as well. So that nexus was easy. And for us, similar to Marshall, we actually have an in-house database system, which also lends us to an in-house app, which is lovely. So everything ties together with us. So
Perfect.
Your tablet and your phone and your computer all talk to each other, all are on the same thing. So again, the transition to Nspire V was very simple because we were already integrated and we're already used to using an online system. So just basically the standards just changed. And because of the way our lovely people in IT did it with the search function, it made it even easier because you're not trying to dig down into the trees to find out where does this fail. You type in water heater and all of the fails for water heater come up. And so if your systems have that ability, I would strongly encourage you to have that because it made our inspectors, me primarily, but our other folks here, it was much easier because you didn't have to remember every single fail and where it was. You can say, I know that window's broken. You type in window and you find the one that it is. And so that made it so much easier not to overthink the nuances of the fails because it was in our system already. So that kind of thing, if your software can do that, I highly recommend that transition at the same time because it worked much more smoothly and was much easier to support than trying to do another piece of paper.
So Sylvia, does Santa Rosa have its own enterprise software system? So you don't use any of the ones outside vendors?
Nope, we don't use anything. We have a system that was developed maybe 20 years ago called H-Track, which is a database system. And then our IT folks, once we were doing Nspire, the pilot program worked with us to develop an app for our phones that would tie to our system. And now all of that's in the cloud and integrated. And so our app that we fail inspections from that's, ties into our database system and they all talk to each other. It's a very lovely thing. And again, if you have the resources to do it, it's fabulous. But yes, and it made it much easier because again, it was familiar. You've seen it, you've got it, you've used it for the last couple of years. The transition was much easier to the new Nspire.
Wow, that's awesome. What about Washington County? What was your experience with as far as, utilizing a tablet, integrating with your software system?
Absolutely. We, Washington County, utilized Yardi. And through that, with our public housing Nspire was live first, and we've been slowly been able to do the few inspections in that. But Nspire V we have in testing phase right now, and so the team is actually learning, and that's why when we're in January going live into actually doing inspections in Yardi and through Nspire fully. We'll be using that. We've been testing out and having trouble with the mobile devices. We're finding that it works on Samsung's, but not Apple. And so we're trying to troubleshoot that with a software vendor or see what solutions that we need to do in-house to make that work for team members. So they're still doing it hybrid depending on the equipment that they have, which we have about 5 inspectors out in the field. Totally doing information, and sometimes they had preferred an Android over an Apple, and so now we're finding maybe you don't get the choice so to meet the needs.
So Washington County, so right now what you're doing is you're doing concurrent HQS and Nspire V?
Yep, in the sense that we are still in our 5.8 submissions that we're doing, which we're a little bit unique because we're an MTW cohort too, so we've been having trouble with our 5.8 submissions anyway, so not to get into the weeds too much there. It hasn't been as much of an, because of that, we're experiencing a lot of fun that other agencies are experiencing too. We've been still processing it as HQS in our system until the transition, but we've been identifying, and the team members are doing the inspections as Nspire, informing that, hey, this is an Nspire deficiency or under Nspire when we're fully onto it. So it's been that kind of transition piece that has really helped our team members with their training, and then our landlords with engagement into that slow roll into it has been helpful. And we're hopefully just going to say goodbye to HQS in 24, and 25 will just be Nspire.
Perfect. Actually kind of touching back on, inspectors, right? Because they are key to all of this. Have they reported any kind of feedback in terms of under Nspire V seeing new kinds of defects or any kinds of trends? Or has it essentially just been, the same as it was under HQS?
I want to put that to Belinda on our team as the inspection supervisor to answer for us.
I want to say we haven't had too much change. The big one was the smoke detectors in the bedrooms, because that was not a law here or a code. So that is a change, but our landlords are really receptive to the feedback on that, and they add the smoke detectors very quickly. So that's been probably the biggest one, because we didn't have anything with the GFCI because that was already part of our inspection process. So the big one is the smoke detector.
What about Marshall or Anne in Mishto? Anything from the inspectors as far as new trends or deficiencies that maybe weren't really so highlighted under HQS?
Yeah, ours are finding that there's a lot more 24-hour fails that are coming up under Nspire. The different levels of mold is new to them. That kind of stuff, and just the wide range of the 24-hour fails. Like who looked at a dryer vent before? Yes.
Yeah.
So Marshall,
what about for you, Sylvia?
So I'm the primary inspector, so I do all of this and see people every day. With regards to the 24-hour fails, we've actually developed a very big form. It's the 11 by 14 that lists all of the 24-hour fails. So when we give our tenants and landlords the document that says what are failed, it's a specific form that's just for 24-hour fails. And that's a great tool for us because it's also an education piece. It says, hey, look, there's all of these things that are 24-hour fails. And on the bottom of the form is all of the consequences of you don't do the 24-hour fails. And so we have legally noticed them that if they don't remedy these 24-hour fails, you're going to get abated. And that's been a big part of us, is making sure that we are noticing landlords of the consequences of not rectifying these fails. Because for us before, there was a more relaxed view of it, like, okay, not that big a deal, but here it is. This is what's going to happen. So that form has been really useful for us. I think the other thing that's been a real positive has been a movement away from aesthetics to health and safety, and going into those units and saying, hey, we're not here to look at your stuff. Or if it's dusty, it's dirty, we're not going to overthink that unless there's an infestation problem. And it's that conversation has been easier to have because, again, we're not looking at the aesthetic so much. The real focus and the communication about, we are here for your health and safety. Nspire is about health and safety. And that's made the conversation and the failed items much easier to discuss, because there's a clear connection between what we're failing it for and people's health and safety. And they can see that. Whereas with HQS, some of the things were more nebulous, and they're like, why are you failing it for that? How is that going to be hurtful to me? And so this makes it easier. And so I have found that the Nspire protocols are more positively received than some of the HQS stuff.
Wow. And, kind of still on this topic about the 24-hour fails, what is your process then in Santa Rosa? So you have this form, but as far as the record keeping, how are you sending that form out electronically? In person, and then how do landlords have a way to get that mitigation evidence back to you?
Right. So what our process is that form is a duplicate form. We order
Okay.
them from the printer. So the one copy goes to the tenant while we're standing there because we don't typically see the landlords. Then when I come back before the end of the day, I scan that whole form and I have an email that I send out to the landlords with all of the information. And this is a 24-hour fail that they were supposed to respond to it. One of the other lovely things that's happened with our software system, our app, is that because it's connected, I get an email the next day of all of my 24-hour fails. And it pops up and says, hey, these are 24-hour fails. You need to make sure and follow up on them. Or if one is coming due, so then I will reach out again and make sure they know that if I don't receive this documentation by the end of the day, I have to abate payment. So there's a paper that gets left, it gets scanned and emailed to the email we have on file. And then again, it's a lovely, we have an automated system where those fails get sent to myself and my supervisor so that even if I'm not here, someone else can follow up on those 24-hour fails.
So the landlords then have a way to submit their evidence electronically to the housing
Right.
authority.
Yeah, they
Oh,
send back pictures or invoices to the email that I've just sent to them.
I know I'm going to come back to you, Sylvia, but I want to hear also from Washington County and MSHDA as far as, you know, how you're processing these 24-hour fails.
So MSHDA, it's a inspector's responsibility to immediately contact the landlord if they're not there. So it's email, phone, you know, it's that immediate thing. And then when we get back to the office, we do the hard copy print out and send that to the tenant and landlord.
Washington County?
Yeah, for Washington County, ours is very, very similar to MSHDA. We notify the landlord over the phone, or if the landlord's on site, we go into the office. We try and make it a point to go into the office to let them know any ways that we're on property. But we notify them right away. And then we also send out a letter.
Perfect. I guess the next series of questions is, you know, what I'm hearing is in terms of all of you have a process, you've done your training, you know, equipped your inspectors. Now at this point, you know, here we are coming up to beginning of 2025. What are the challenges that you are still facing with Nspire V? So I'll start with you, Belinda.
I think the big challenge is, I mean, I don't know everything for Nspire, and we still have to when we're out doing inspections because we are doing a hybrid model. Some of the things are still questionable, so I do have to take it back to the office and look it up and let the landlord or the participant know that, you know, I'm not 100% certain on this. I'll have to go back and research it a little bit and get back to you. Just having that transparency with folks, that's, I think, been the biggest challenge because it is still pretty new and there's a lot of details to it.
What about you, Sylvia?
So I would agree with the same thing. The nuances or the subtleties have been some of the challenges, and we just go say, hey, I'm pretty sure this is a fail. Let me go back and check. I also provide landlords in the email with the link to the protocols so that they can look it up as well. And then we do ongoing trainings in our staff meetings. If there's something that I'm finding that's new and different, like, oh, by the way, I'm seeing this all the time. It is a fail. We didn't really realize it's a fail. So we have that ongoing education with our other technicians and our other inspectors so that what we see is at the forefront. But otherwise, the transition has been pretty straightforward and pretty easy because it's logical. It makes sense. And if you've been out in the field, as most of you have, you see it and it still makes sense. So I would just concur with Belinda that the challenges have been the nuances and just this transparency of saying, hey, I don't necessarily know and I'll let you know.
And Anne or Marsha, what about it with MSHDA?
Yeah, with us, it's more of the inspectors making sure that they know all the new standards or the degrees of the standards. And then just making sure that if they do have questions, I'm actually their point of contact. They can call or email me anytime, just to clarify. But yeah, it's just getting to know all those standards in our handheld device, it will give us the possible fails. A lot of our inspectors are having a hard time with some things that were a fail under HQS that are not a fail under Nspire. So that's a hurdle for them as well, because they contact me and say, how do I fail this? And I'm like, well, is it in there? If it's not in there, we can't fail it. Unless we, request those exceptions and make a little bit more stringent.
Yeah, we definitely have had lots of inspectors. I'm sorry, lots of inspectors that you got to kind of dump the glass of water out and refill it with Nspire because it is different. But there's more similarities than differences. I will just add to that conversation that because we do biennial inspections, we've been doing Nspire for 5 months. We have a lot of landlords we haven't hit yet. We have about 10,000 landlords, so there's just continual and ongoing education as we're inspecting units and engaging landlords that maybe got the flyer initially, but haven't had an inspection come due for some time. So,
before we turn it over to questions from our audience, I just want to round out with what advice at this point would you give to your PHA peers who are preparing to implement Nspire? So I'll start with you, Marshall.
Yeah, so my advice would be it's not as scary as it looks. It looks daunting. It seems like a big change, and in some ways it is. But like I just said, in many ways it's similar, right? We're still doing 24-hour fails and 24-hour notices. They just look a little different. We're still, a lot of what we're inspecting is the same. So it looks daunting. I would encourage PHAs to not be afraid to move to Nspire. We've had great success with it. Like I mentioned at the top of the call, more than 10,000 inspections conducted under Nspire. It's a change. There'll be bumps in the road. Kind of like Sylvia said, you just work through them. And really kudos to HUD regarding all the resources available on the Nspire website. I think these inspection standards are very clearly written. It's helped to, when there is those questions, well, is this a fail or is it a not? Having those clearly written standards to reference and made available publicly for all landlords. A landlord could even go through the training if they would like. Kind of more transparent than it's ever been before. And to Sylvia's point earlier, it makes sense. And the health and safety stuff certainly is good. So that's my take on it. I would encourage anyone that's kind of on the fence of whether to do it now or do it later to dive in, and I think you'd see similar results to us.
That's awesome. What about you, Sylvia?
Oh, I completely concur with Marshall. The only thing I say is give yourself the grace of time. It's going to take you a little time to figure it out. You're going to make some mistakes. Just be transparent with yourself and your team members and your landlords and your tenants and say, hey, it's new, but just dive in and do it. It's really not that different. It's really not that hard. Have a good app that helps you with your training and with your understanding is a key part. Again, if your app can have a search function, that is so useful. But again, just give yourself some time. Dive in, do the work, adopt it now instead of waiting, because it's not going to get any different. And I think you'll find in a few months, everybody's cool with it. So just encourage you to jump right in.
Thank you. And Liz, Belinda?
I'm going to piggyback off of what Marshall and Sylvia said. It's not terribly bad. A lot of it is very similar to HQS. We also have a weekly huddle with our inspection team and bring any questions or anything that was kind of uncertain to the team, and we all discuss it together and look it up together and find the solution. So we've really, I feel like it actually brought us closer together because we all went through the training at the same time.
And I will also just add to that, just with our team members, they were trained pretty early on, and it was still unclear for a lot of the trainers. So when we invested in having the inspection team go through the training again in person, and it was so much more clarity that happened from that training, that they were able to then kind of come back and feel a little bit more confident too. So if any of your team members have gone through the training and it was early and they're like, what is this? also, just like all the other agencies had said, just do it, because we're going to do it anyways. It's not been as hard. It's just a slow and steady.
I'd like to piggyback on what Liz said as well. We've had inspectors who've been doing HQS for decades. And so it's almost like a fresh start, because then when they've been doing them, some people inspect things a little bit differently. They're on a little bit different page on what their training was 20 years ago and what they remember. By training all your people and starting fresh from point A, more of your inspectors will be on the same page and your inspections will be replicable, because that's what you want. You want the inspector, 2 different people to go out and see and do exactly the same thing. So now with Nspire, we've looked at it as, okay, we're all going to start from the same place. We're going to take the same training. We're going to have our weekly meetings, just like Belinda said, so we see it all the same. So when I go out or someone else goes out, it's the same. So it's almost like take this opportunity as a fresh start for all of your people who've been doing it forever, and say, now this is different. We're all going to be together on the same page, so it reflects the same thing, which I think is part of what Nspire is trying to do anyway, to make it across the platforms that everybody sees it the same. So we've looked at it as to take that as an opportunity to do that, and I would encourage your folks to do the same thing.
Perfect. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my colleague Lori Rawson help me here. We have I see a lot of questions in the chat, so I want to make sure we have some time to take some of these questions. So Lori,
Okay.
you want to help me pull up the questions for the group?
So let me just say that there are a couple of standards questions, and I don't believe we have a standards expert on the call today because of the focus of the call was more implementation.
Okay.
So I think on those standards questions, one was asking about window screens. I know that there is going to be an FAQ about this, but if what we can do is compile these standards questions, and maybe the next office hours can open with those questions. I think that's probably the best thing to do, rather than those of us who are not standards experts guessing. And if one is able to join before the end of the call, then we will turn those over to them.
Perfect.
Here's a question that was asked multiple times. Would MSHDA and Washington County be willing to share the letters to landlords introducing Nspire?
Sure.
Yeah, we're certainly open to it. I don't know the best way to do that in this forum, but we're willing.
And
Yeah.
we didn't send out letters. We went into landlords' offices and let them know verbally, repeatedly.
Into landlord trainings.
Yeah, and landlord training. We do monthly landlord training sessions.
Okay, great.
So what I think I can do, Lori, is I can maybe do connect with MSHDA, and then see it, like get their template, and then we can see how we can maybe share it on one of our resource links.
Yes, that makes sense. We can figure that out behind the scenes and make it available. Hopefully when we make this this session available with the video or the audio, excuse me. Okay, there was a question about what software PHAs are using, and I think they all did answer that, but just to repeat, do you guys want to just again say what software you're using to do the inspections in case anybody missed it?
We're using Emphasis Software's their mobile Nspire application.
City of Santa Rosa has their own app that was developed internally.
And Washington County is using Yardi.
Okay, thank you. So here's a question. You all kind of talked about this, so I'm not sure there will be anything to add, but I will go ahead and ask it. How did you deal with additional 24-hour requirements and the time constraints, which means increased and more landlord certification forms? Has this been a big issue? I know you said there are more 24-hour fails. Is managing them been more difficult?
No, we treat them the same as before. We just have to treat more of them.
And ours haven't really gone up too much. So we've been doing the same as before.
Okay.
We've just been doing it more overtly. I think we got dinged by one of our audits that we weren't following up as forcefully as we should have been doing. And so we're much more forceful about it now.
Okay, thank you. Sylvia, this one's for you. Can you provide a copy of the form for the 24-hour fails that you were providing to your owners?
I would be happy to. I do have permission to do that. So whatever someone can email me, I'd be happy to email that to them, and however you want to make it public, that would be fine. We're happy to do that.
I can help with that, Lori, just as we are with Mishta.
Okay, great. Here's a question about the change in Nspire that allows for no windows in the bedroom. And then it says yet only one form of egress. I'm not quite sure about that part of it, but has the no windows in the bedroom been a concern or a problem in your inspections?
We have not come across that in Washington County yet.
And we have not come across it in Sonoma County either, because its building code requires the window.
Yeah, building code in Michigan, I don't know how long ago, but did change that they don't require the windows. And so it helped us actually when Nspire changed that, because there were a lot of even Mishta subsidized or HUD subsidized rehab projects that didn't have the windows in the bedrooms. And we were not able to use them under HQS. And now it opened up a lot more rental possibilities. And then that single egress, it's hard for some people to wrap their head around that. It's like one path out. And so as long as we explain it to them, and our inspectors, I think, are having the hardest time because they want to enforce those stricter rules. But yeah, it has actually helped us with more rentals availability.
Great. Okay, let's see. I'm not sure that this one is relevant yet because the 10-year sealed battery is not a requirement until the end of this month, but it says, how are the inspectors verifying the compliance with that there's a 10-year sealed battery smoke detector? Have you guys come across that yet, since the standard isn't in effect yet?
We're already seeing them because a lot of landlords are wanted to phase it in, and you can really tell if it's a battery that, those old 9 volts, because the sealed battery compartment detectors look so different. So it's pretty easy to visually tell what they are.
Well, and in California, those sealed ones you have not been able to purchase ones with batteries for a couple of years. And so that has led easily into Nspire, because you can't buy one with a battery. So everything that's been replaced has been without the battery. So that makes it easier. And again, you can tell the difference. And so what we've been doing for the last year is just reminding folks, hey, next time we're here, that's going to need to be this other kind of battery. You can't buy anything different. And basically the other comment that I make is if it's not one of those with the battery, it's out of warranty anyway. So you might as well change it because it's out of warranty.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we have a standards expert who has joined us. So I'm going to read a couple of the standards questions we got. The first one was, what will happen to a development or landlord that removes the window screens during the winter months? Is that still going to be considered a failed finding? Oh, I think Harold is maybe not on the speaker line. So
this is Rich. This is Rich. I'm on, actually.
Oh, Rich is on. Okay.
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry, thank you.
So as far as the screens, if the inspector's there the day of the inspection, there are no screens. There's no defect for no screen. It's if the screen is in place and has damage, it'll be recorded accordingly.
Okay, great. And then there's a question about the mold. The mold substance, does it require the use of a moisture meter? It says, for example, under deficiency 4, the action is if evidence of elevated moisture level is present, then test for the condition using a pinless moisture meter.
Yeah,
so is that a required piece of equipment?
It is something that they should be using to further validate that defect. I will say that we know for sure that there's a lot of inspectors don't have that equipment yet, but it is something they should be using as part of that standard, to apply the standard.
Hey guys, I'm able to get in now. So this is Harold.
Thanks, Harold.
Okay, thank you. Now we have 2 experts. Let's see. What the next one. So people are interested in communicating with some of you. So I think we posted some emails in the chat. I think it was Washington County in particular, somebody was asking about. Here's a question. How many inspections do your inspectors do in one day?
I would say that we do between 30 and 40 inspections a day between all the inspectors.
So how many per inspector?
We average about 9 inspections, but we also throw in re-inspections in there. So it can be a little bit more and a little less.
All right. What about Sylvia and Marshall or Ann?
I'd say the same as Belinda. I do between 10 and 12 a day.
Same for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know it on our app, I've been told it does take longer just because until you figure out the flow of it, to give more time. But that's just us in our app and learning the pathway. But yeah, that's about normal for how many to do.
All right. There's another question about elaborating on what characteristics how can you tell the alarm is 10-year fixed battery without removing the alarm? Maybe there's no other way to say it than other by looking at it, but can you give a little more description, Ann, maybe?
I'll just add that, if you see the little door on the side of the smoke detector for the 9-volt battery, it's not sealed.
Right.
So it's less about how do you tell it is and more about what it isn't, right? So you see that battery door, it's not a sealed one. Age certainly is an indicator.
Yeah, it's actually harder to tell if it's a combination CO and smoke detector. One little tip I was doing, if it was hard to see, it was a higher ceiling, I would take a picture and then zoom in. Might be easier to tell that way.
Great, that's a great tip. Somebody just asked again, did they say there is no window required in the bedroom? And yes, that is true. I don't know if our standards experts want to expand on that at all.
Outside of programmatic requirements for the standard itself, the inspector will only evaluate what's present there and then determine whether there's any kind of rescue opening or egress issue going on with that, or the window operability itself. But we're not going to say you need to install a window in there outside of regular Nspire v programmatic requirements, but not from a standards perspective.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question. This is for a tax credit property. Is there a provision in Nspire that if the property has been inspected by another governmental entity, tax credit, like for example, the tax credit agency, will HUD accept the other government entity's inspection results? So this is an alternative inspection. Is there somebody on, Jody or Ashley? Do you want to try answering, or I can?
I'd be happy to answer. Yeah, so this is a provision allowed under HOTMA voucher. It does allow for the use of home or low-income housing tax credit inspections to qualify as meeting the Nspire standards for regular inspections, like the biennial or triennial. For initial inspections, you can use a home or LIHTC inspection to enter into a HAP contract, but a Nspire inspection will need to be completed within 30 days. And if you choose to use these alternative inspections, it does need to be a policy that you have written in your admin plan.
Thank you, Jody. And there will be a future office hours on the alternative standards under HOTMA. I don't think a lot of PHAs are taking advantage of them because, well, for various reasons, but there will be a specific office hours on that in the future. We have one hand raised. Ahmed, can you help us with that? Wendell, can you Did you get the message to unmute yourself?
Wendell, you are unmuted.
All right, it's looking like we're not hearing you, Wendell. Okay, sorry about that, Wendell. If you want to type your question in the chat, we can do that. We have, in the meantime, we have one more question that came in, and this I think might be our last question. Does every window need to be opened and evaluated in the unit, or just some of the windows? So, Rich?
That would be every window. The inspector will have to evaluate every window that's operational to check its functionality.
And if a window is designed not to open, then it doesn't need to open.
Exactly.
Correct?
Exactly.
But if it is designed to open, it must operate.
That's correct.
Okay. Great. All right. I think we are at 11:50. Well, it depends on where you are. Where I am, it's 11:59. So I think it's probably time to wrap up. If we did not get to your question, please join for a future office hours and we will make sure that we get to it. We will also be publishing questions and answers. Thank you. I want to turn it back over to Marcy to quickly wrap up. Thanks, everybody.
Well, everyone, again, thank you so much. First of all, a big thank you, big appreciation to the housing authorities that joined today. Mishta, Santa Rosa, Washington County, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for stepping forward and helping out your PHA peers and also helping us out, because hearing your feedback really helps us to make, Nspire V a better program, and then just seeing where we need to continue to, make the improvements to make the process go smoothly for the landlords, your staff, and the residents. Again, thank you to everyone who joined today. Please join us for future office hours. And with that, everyone have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
This event has concluded. Thank you for using Event Services. You may now
Thanks, everyone.
disconnect.